So is Mitch Lawrence ready to put the Sixers into the Eastern Conference Finals after beating the Clippers? SiriusXM NBA radio, longtime NBA guy Mitch Lawrence right now on the Sports Bash. He tweeted this: "It's tempting after this win, but I'm not going to put the Sixers in the East Finals until I see them play this way on the road more than once." So even if they beat the Bucks on Saturday out of the All-Star break, Mitch, you're not ready just yet. But the signs feel a little bit better than our last conversation.
Well, is Giannis going to play, or is he still going to be on paternity leave when they play him in?
That's like 11
play,
days from now. He's got to be done by then, right?
Well, he's got to be playing in Chicago this weekend.
True.
He's got a team, right? He's the head of a team. So, I want to see, if they can, in the post-All-Star deal for the Sixers, for me and for everybody else who looks at the league, is, they're going to win games at home. They're a dominant team at home. We know that. And I was really, when Brett Brown said it's the best he's seen Embiid and Simmons play in one game together against the Clippers. Well, let's see them do that on the road. And they've got some big road games, obviously, coming up. I think that would make a lot of people feel, especially in Philadelphia, and Brett Brown included, and Josh Harris all the way on down, make them feel a lot better about the Sixers than just, having this ridiculously great home record and being a bad road team, because they're going to have to start right now. They'd have to start the playoffs on the road, right?
What did you see in the game against the Clippers that you liked, that you're like, okay, if they can keep doing this, this is enough? Because they did make some changes in that Clipper game, most notably Al Horford to the bench.
I saw Josh Richardson outscore Kawhi Leonard, Paul George, and Lou Williams by himself in the fourth quarter. That's what I want to see. I want to see a Sixer who can play, who can give me a 17-point fourth quarter in the playoffs, who can basically outgun somebody else. I don't know if Josh Richardson could do that again. That, to me, was one of the great things about that game and the way they attacked the Clippers. And, the Clippers aren't the biggest team, but the Clippers that night did have Paul George out on the court with Kawhi Leonard and their outstanding defenders. I don't think Patrick Beverley played in that game. But those are the type of things you want to see. I mean, my big concern about the Sixers has been, and I hate to, repeat this, but it's been like, who can I depend on late in these games in the playoffs to get me a big shot, who can get to the basket, who can give me what Jimmy Butler did last year. If it's going to be Josh Richardson, he looked pretty good the other night. I don't know if he can do that in the playoffs, but he looked pretty good that night.
Can it be Ben Simmons? Can it be Ben Simmons, Mitch? Come on.
Ben Simmons, the Ben Simmons who doesn't want to shoot the ball? No,
that's not important in basketball.
Look, we know it can't be Ben Simmons. It's not going to be Joel Embiid.
Why? I think it can be Embiid, though, Mitch. I do. I mean, listen, I know it's not the traditional.
On a game-to-game, I'm talking about a guy who can do it on a game-to-game basis in the heat of the playoffs.
Well, I mean, game-to-game in the playoffs, I don't know how many times we see, how many times is Embiid going to have win the Sixers the game with the ball in his hands with under 10 seconds left in the postseason?
It's going to be, that's the big question, because there are only a few guys who can play that way, who can you to depend on. The Kawhi Leonards, Kevin Durant's hurt. He can't do that. Obviously, LeBron is a guy you'd say, okay, I want to put the ball in his hands late in the game, see what he can do. I don't know if the Sixers have that player. It's going to have to be somebody, because they're going to have to, that's the way of the world in the NBA for the most part. I know, it doesn't have to be necessarily game to game, but it has to be a guy you can consistently, end of a shot clock, hey, make a play for us. Get your own shot. And that's what the Sixers really don't have.
I'm curious, Mitch, how much have you seen this year of Glenn Robinson when he was with the Warriors? Because we've been trying to figure out if he is a player who is coming into his own a little bit finally in the NBA, or if he was just scoring points on a bad team.
Well,
because even in his 2 games with the Sixers,
I tend to say he's scoring points on a bad team.
All right.
I mean, look, the fact that the Warriors gave up on him, what does that tell you? Like, they gave up on D'Angelo Russell.
Well, the Warriors gave up on life this year.
I'm sorry?
Right. I thought the Warriors were just giving up on everybody so they can have the number 1 overall pick.
Well, the Warriors had significant injuries to two guys. I mean, what do you want them to do?
Well, no,
two guys who take up a lot of salary cap space. They don't have a lot of flexibility. They were hard capped. So, it's like, yeah, they gave up on the season, but it's also understandable. It's not like they had all kinds of room and they could have made all kinds of moves. They're going to get Curry back. They're going to get Klay Thompson back. That represents a big part of their cap. They're going to have Draymond and Andrew Wiggins moving forward. Excuse me. We'll see how good Andrew Wiggins is in a team, in a better environment, better culture, et cetera. I don't think he's going to all of a sudden get the Kobe Bryant gene in him and have this unbelievable motor that he never showed in Minnesota. He showed it very rarely. But kind of give the Warriors a pass, guys, because they had two guys out with significant injuries. And they lost Kevin Durant. No fault of their own. They wanted to re-sign Kevin Durant. He didn't want to be there.
So we've kind of seen this with the Sixers before then, where they've added right around the All-Star break in each of the last 2 years. So does this one just kind of feel like more of the same? Like I've seen that act before, or do you think Robinson and Burks can actually be a cure for what was ailing them as far as ball movement and offensive fluidity?
I think they'll help somewhat. They're not going to move the needle in a big spot in the playoffs. In a big spot in the playoffs, either of those guys are going to be a guy you're going to lean on down the stretch.
No, but if them being on the floor gives them better spacing for guys that we're mentioning like Ben and Joel and Richardson, Yeah,
but better spacing and stuff. But the Jimmy Butler the role that you saw Kawhi do in Toronto last year, the guy who can who's going to basically say, hey guys, get on my shoulders. I'm going to carry you to wins here. I just don't see that from those guys. That they're role players. You're not going to get that from role players. So we'll see. I mean, look, here's the deal. Milwaukee right now is can win they're on pace to win 70 games. Do I think they're going to waltz into the NBA Finals? No. I think a team that gets hot down the stretch of the season in the Eastern Conference, whether it's the Philly, Boston, not so much Indiana, but a team like even Toronto, I think they can give Milwaukee a hell of a series and maybe beat them. I don't think it's out of the question because the one thing that Giannis hasn't done, we saw it in the playoffs last year, is that we saw a defense that basically stacked up, they loaded up against Giannis, and there was nobody that the Bucks could really turn to get them, past Toronto when they had a 2-0 lead in that series. And so I don't know. I think Giannis can do it. He just hasn't proven it yet. So why can't it be the Sixers if they get their act together? Why can't it be Boston? Why can't it be a team, even Toronto, which doesn't have Kawhi Leonard? Why can't it be them? I mean, Milwaukee is a juggernaut in the regular season. That doesn't mean that they're going to play the same way in the playoffs.
Mitch, how wrong has everyone been about the Eastern Conference? At least for myself, it's like the overall narrative going into the season was, well, it's the Bucks and the Sixers. And after last night's game, the Celtics game, I'm sitting there like, the Celtics look really good. The Raptors obviously are looking really good. Everything you just said, and it's like, this conference is pretty deep.
Well, it is. The one thing that the conference, Kawhi leaves to me, it's like LeBron left, Kawhi left. You don't have a guy who's ever won, except for Durant, who's obviously hurt. You don't have a Finals MVP, I don't believe, in the conference anymore who you could look at and say, yeah, you know what, this team, he got to double this guy, and this guy's going to be trouble, and we have to stop him first and foremost. I mean, who's that player on Boston? Who's that? It's not, Jason Tatum doesn't have the resume. Kemba Walker's only played 11 playoff games. We don't know if Kemba Walker, with his body type, is going to be able to withstand the grueling sometimes physical play of the playoffs game in, game out into May and June. He's never done that. He never did that in Charlotte because they always played on teams that got knocked out in the first round. You can go team to team. I mean, Philly, Embiid, and Simmons, you have questions about them, especially Embiid's reliability here. Here's a guy who sometimes doesn't answer the bell in the playoffs. He sometimes, you see him as much as I do, guys, in the playoffs. Sometimes he's a disappointment. Sometimes his talent is through the roof, but he doesn't give you what he needs to all the time, game in and game out. Those are the difference makers you want to see in the playoffs. Toronto, I can't count on Siakam or Kyle Lowry to replace Kawhi in terms of the role of the number one scorer down the stretch of these games in the playoffs. These guys Lowry's failed in the past, and Siakam was the number two guy last year. That's a different role from going into this year. And, Miami, Jimmy Butler, I thought they made nice additions. I don't know, we'll see what Jimmy Butler does in the heat of the playoffs. Sometimes he has his ups and his downs in the playoffs. He's never been the most consistent guy ever.
Would it be fair to say, Mitch, that the Sixers have the most talent of all the teams, but also the most questions?
Oh, yeah. They've got a tremendous amount of talent, and we've got a lot of questions about their leadership, about where their heads are at, especially Joel Embiid. I got to, Joel Embiid, what he did on social media with Jimmy Butler, I mean, that's just a bunch of nonsense. I'm sure you guys saw it. We talked about it on Sirius NBA Radio. It's not a great look for him. I know when Brett Brown says, it's Joel, what are you going to do? I mean, other great players who lead their teams to championships, they don't get involved with that nonsense. And that's what it is. It's just a bunch of nonsense that takes away from guys' focus, to me anyway. And I just wonder about Joel Embiid from that standpoint. So, talent-wise, we all know the Sixers have a ton of talent. Well, and at home, like I watched the game the other night, and I was damn impressed like everybody else. But knowing how they can't win, they don't win on the road. They're a terrible team at points on the road. It's like, all right, they still have a lot to prove to everybody.
There's always a lot of media going on, obviously, with the NBA All-Star Game. All the writers, national writers are there. Do you think Ben Simmons is going to be asked a lot over the next day or two from guys who don't always cover him why he does not shoot the basketball? And will he answer this on a bigger stage?
He'll be asked all kinds of questions, ranging from that to all the nonsensical questions you could ever think of, which drives these players up the wall. Because you have all types of people with credentials out there who will ask him all kinds of things. Talk to him about anything you could think of. The fires that raged in Australia, and topics that you can't even dream about, because this is just what the All-Star Game is all about. They'll probably ask him about. I would think one of the questions is going to be about the viability going forward of he and Joel pairing, because there's a lot of buzz around the league about what happens if the Sixers don't go far this year. Will they end up splitting up these guys? Will these guys be traded? I think that would probably be a lot of, for reporters that don't talk to him all the time, I'm sure they'll talk to he and Joel about that whole situation, because that's what everybody thinks. Everybody thinks that, if the Sixers don't win this year, if they don't get to a conference finals or even beyond, there'll be a coaching change, then somebody is going to get traded, whether it's Joel or Ben. So I expect the people out there in Chicago are going to be asking those type of questions.
Mitch Lawrence, longtime NBA writer, and of course SiriusXM NBA radio. It is All-Star Weekend. You got any good All-Star coverage stories? I'm sure you've been to plenty in All-Star. I saw your tweet the other day. They got to get it in Miami. The heck with Indiana, Cleveland, and Utah the next couple of years.
Well, it's funny, and I covered. The only All-Star – I've been covering All-Star games since '86 in Dallas, okay? And except for the last couple of years where I haven't been on site in the last 3 or 4 years. Last one I was on site, guys, was when they had the game here in New York. They split up the deal. The Saturday deal was in Brooklyn. Curry won the three-point shooting contest. It's only three-point winning contest. And then they had the game at the Garden. But in 1990, they had the game in Miami back then, and it's the only time it's been in Miami. And that's because Miami's owner, Mickey Arison, is a big guy. They always have on this weekend the Miami International Boat Show. And so he never wants to have the All-Star game. And it's amazing, especially if you're sitting out in Chicago now where the wind chill is, who knows what it is. I mean, they're freezing out there. And you'd like, how come it hasn't been in Miami for the last 30 years? Well, there's your answer. But I was in Chicago the last time it was there, and I'm dating myself again. It's 1988, and I'm one of the people watching the dunk contest, which, by the way, I believe was in the afternoon. We loved that because we were able to run the streets of Chicago late at night. But I'm watching this thing, and I'm folding, and I'm going, Dominique, who won it in a couple of years earlier, I think it was in '85, he won it. I swear to God, I'm sitting there going, Dominique just had a better dunk contest than Michael Jordan. But, of course, who's going to beat Michael Jordan in Chicago, right?
Right.
So Dominique, he took that loss well, but that was obviously a fun weekend. It was cold. It was much colder than the temperature never got above like 3 degrees the whole time we were there. It was ridiculous, but had a great time in Chicago. And Dominique, to his credit, always whenever I see him, he always tells me, the great thing about the dunk contest was here's a guy who's one of the legendary dunkers. He competed in 5 dunk contests throughout his career, including the first NBA dunk contest in '84, I believe it was. And he says, he competed in 5. He said, I actually thought I won 4, but he said I only got credit for 2 of them. And he was never going to beat Michael Jordan, obviously, in the old Chicago Stadium. But the NBA, it's funny. Michael Jordan, guys, I don't know if you remember this, but Michael Jordan actually competed in a 3-point shootout contest.
Don't remember that.
He competed in one.
No.
It was in Miami in 1990, and I think to this day he has the lowest score ever. He made 2 of his first 5 shots, and then he didn't make a money ball. He scored a 5. That was his final total in a round.
It's a big stain on his career, Mitch. It's a big stain.
That's what everybody remembers, right?
Maybe that's why that Jordan doesn't want the All-Star game back in Miami, so they don't talk about that again.
But, I remember, obviously, Kobe won a dunk contest. I think it was Cleveland in 97. And, that's like, for a long time, you had the biggest stars of the game who were involved in All-Star Saturday. Jordan with the dunk. You had, Dominique. You had, I think Barkley. You had, like LeBron never even entered a dunk contest. Can you believe that? LeBron, who, has been around, 16, 17 years, how long it's been. I mean, he's a guy who we thought coming in he was going to be at least try to dunk once or twice. He never was in a dunk contest. And the word was, and this is a rumor, unofficial, who knows, that he was like demanding $1 million to enter the dunk contest. Jeez. Who knows? It's just disappointing he was never in it. In terms of the games themselves, I mean, it used to be a lot more competitive, a lot better, those games back in the 80s and 90s and aughts, guys, when people really took the game more seriously, and you've seen how it's regressed, and it's not been nearly as good in the last, 5-10 years, because guys just don't, they just don't take it as seriously. And that's why they finally had to have this system where you've got, the drafting of the players by the players, which is kind of cool. But if the guys don't want to compete and play hard and play a little bit of defense, it's just a spectacle. There was some time, I'm sure you agree with me on this. I'm sure there were times in the last few years where you said, All-Star Saturday, the dunking and the three-point shooting was a lot better than the game.
I don't even remember the last time I watched the game, to be honest with you.
Oh, okay.
That's how, yeah. I know Ryan, he's a little younger, that he's into it and stuff, but I haven't watched it for a bunch of years. You're right. It just kind of seems like, if you're watching an exhibition and the wide openness, that it's fun for that.
Yeah, and I went to the David Stern, the big memorial they had for David Stern up here a few weeks ago, and Magic Johnson got up there and spoke from the heart about when David Stern allowed him to come back and play in the All-Star game after the whole HIV announcement thing, which was a huge deal. That was down in Orlando. He makes the game, the big shot at the end. That was obviously a huge moment for the NBA All-Star game. And it's just, it's just one of those. Hey, the one in Philly was great. I liked it more when they put it in warm weather cities. When you're a writer, you want to go to warm weather cities. But hey, this is like you said, the next 3 years are what? Indy, Cleveland, and Salt Lake City.
Yep.
So we'll see. But usually it's, the interest level is just through the roof. The stuff they have for the fans is great, as people know if they remember that, if they've gone. So it's just a lot of fun. It's obviously a big thing for the corporate sponsors, big thing for the players. Everybody has big parties, which I never get invited to, but that's because, I'm just a lowly writer. But, hey, I'm sure they're going to have a great time in Chicago, the cold weather notwithstanding.
All right, Mitch, we'll leave you with this. Your NBA Finals pick at the All-Star Game is?
I'm staying with the Clippers and the Bucks. That was my pick going in, and I'm telling you what, I'm starting to worry a little bit about if the Clippers are ever going to get healthy because Paul George is hurt again. But I know it'll probably be the other LA team. I only think right now it's still a three-horse race. It's still the Bucks. It's still, and like I pointed out, they have some. We'll see what they do, and it's the two LA teams. I don't buy anybody else out west.
Mitch Lawrence, SiriusXM NBA Radio, Mitch_Lawrence, and of course the All-Star Game can be heard right here on 97.3 ESPN. Thanks, Mitch.
Hey, thanks, guys. Have a great one.